Hello, Spectrumites and other people. My name is Forrest, and welcome to episode 4 of The Pancake King, Life and Marriage on the Spectrum. In this podcast, I'm going to give you insights on the autism spectrum, break down some of the myths surrounding it, tell you stories about my experiences on the spectrum, as well as the marriage I have with someone else on the spectrum, and allow you to have a window into my life through conversations I have with friends and family. More importantly, I hope you learn something from this series, as well as have fun listening to it. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your significant other or a friend starts crying during a movie with you? Have you experienced that awkwardness where you're not quite sure what to do about it? Imagine going through that while sitting in the back of a car watching your friend cry at the end of Logan. Well, one week in July of 2017, that was me. I was sitting in the back of my future wife's family car showing her the movie Logan on my laptop, on the way to Kansas City to see her grandparents. Nearing the end of the movie, I saw those tears drifting down her face and I thought, oh crap, she's not happy. Whenever I see my at the time girlfriend cry, I feel like ascending up the stairs to heaven to snipe the angel that neglected to stay by her so this wouldn't happen. What seemed to break her out of her sad spell was when a song started playing on the car radio, and she paused the movie to sing along to it. I don't remember what the exact song was. I only remember that it might have been Imagine Dragons. That was one of many highlights during that week I hold pretty close to heart. That trip was exactly something I needed at the time, so let's wind the clocks back for just a second. A year and a half before this trip, I had to move back in with my parents. In trying to take several steps forward, I had to take a massive step back. I wasn't ready to be independent yet. Independence is a struggle to achieve for most people on the autism spectrum. Most Spectrumites feel the sting of change when they go through transitions like that in their lives. The realization that they have to be completely reliant on themselves the minute they leave their parents can be intimidating and even a little haunting. I tried so hard to strike out on my own, but despite my best efforts, I failed, and I had to start over. My family lives out in the middle of the country, so there was no bus route to take me places like I had when I lived in town. I had to rely on other ways to get to work, get to college, and be able to go hang out with friends. When I moved back in with my parents, I settled down a little too hard. If I wasn't at work or at college, I spent most of my time in my room watching YouTube or watching movies. My finances started slowly sinking because being back with my parents gave me a sense of security that lacked my concern for money. I was going to college, but didn't know what I really wanted to do, and I didn't have a clear sense of direction in my life. There was an unfinished book on my laptop that's supposed to be about my experiences on the autism spectrum, called The Pancake King, by the way. By the time I went on this trip to Kansas City, the only thing I really had going for me was that Chick-fil-A hired me. Okay, so there are definitely worse things, but the job only lasted about 3 months. I was hoping it would fill the days my other job at Hy-Vee didn't give me. Well, it really didn't. But I had my girlfriend. She was pretty cool. Pretty hot. At the time, though, it really was strictly a dating relationship, and we weren't really talking about the future. Certainly not marriage. This trip to Kansas City wasn't actually the first time I went. The first time was a few months after KG and I started dating, and it was Thanksgiving weekend. Sure, it was cool, but didn't quite leave the same kind of impression that this trip did. I've met a decent number of people who were interested in me and wanted to learn about me, but I don't think I've ever met anyone as enthusiastic to learn about me as KG's grandparents. It was almost overwhelming the kind of questions they'd ask me, but even better is the fact that they were great listeners, and the more they listened, the more I was willing to share. KG's grandpa in particular loved asking questions, and sometimes he'd forget the answers I give him, because he would ask the same question again later, with the same curiosity and listening ears. I'll never forget when he asked me 2 separate times what an Uber is and how it works. I'll never forget the time when KG's grandparents stayed up really late with me one night, as I learned more about KG and how to best communicate with her. Sadly, KG's grandpa passed away a year and a half ago. I only met him a handful of times across the span of several years, but the impression he left on me is one I'll never forget. He believed I was good for KG. He rooted for me and he supported me. It was more than I could have ever expected, which leads me to the point of this story. I would have my low points at my parents' home even after the trip, but that week in Kansas City was a defining point for the direction I would take my life in. Being fully accepted, embraced, and welcomed by my wife's family, and knowing that I was loved and supported by them was a tipping point for me. Even the acceptance KG often extended to me seemed to expand while we were there. Near the end of our time in Kansas City, I knew I wanted to think about marriage more and gradually bring it into mine and KG's conversations. How could I? I didn't really have much going for me back home, so I could say that I had a lot of balls to even bring this up in the first place. We had to stay at a hotel during the second half of the trip because of plumbing problems, and KG and I were sitting in the hotel lounge doing our own thing. I was writing a rough draft of what would eventually become a book for our upcoming Legacy trilogy. More on that in future episodes. And I felt compelled to sneak off and talk to KG's mom about introducing the topic of marriage in our conversations. She was all for me trying, and when I got back to KG, I was excited to ask her about it, just to float the concept around. I was nervous, but so excited. It had never been talked about before. I was ready! It lasted just over 10 seconds before KG wanted to show me Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris fight. Let's just say for now, it took multiple occasions to finally bring the topic of marriage into our relationship. Baby steps. When I came back home after the trip, it was hard to explain it to my parents without crying. It felt like I was part of a new family, and it was a step in the right direction. Seeds were planted that would ultimately sprout into a significant part of my future, my motivation for finally moving away from my parents, and finding the job I needed to take care of myself and eventually someone else. I went from throwing up all over myself in the back of a public transportation van on the way to a job interview at Chick-fil-A to moving my stuff into my own apartment with a goal in mind that I was passionate about. No matter what kind of a low point you believe you're at, and believe me, I haven't even begun telling the story about mine. There is always a way to progress. It doesn't matter that you're on the spectrum. There is always hope that your life can change for the better. Sometimes something can be staring you right in the face that has the answers you're looking for to pull yourself out of that low point. Sometimes you have to put in the extra effort to find it. Regardless, the good news is, you can make it.
Do you know what my parents used to do to me when I clogged the toilet?
They made you drink from the toilet?
No! Did your parents make you do that?
Hey guys, while I have you, I'd like to promote a singer and songwriter I've had the pleasure of getting to know, David Angus. David has produced music for me in the past, including the opening song of my audio drama Mortal Deity, which you can find on my YouTube channel, Vanzot Productions. Check out his music on Spotify and download his albums when the clubs come out and his latest Afters at the Casino. I know he'll appreciate it. Hey guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast, write a review to help the show grow, and subscribe to my Substack at thepancakeking.substack.com to receive updates on new podcast episodes, a new blog post every Saturday, and other content I may put out. You can also check out the entertainment me, KG, and my friends make together on our YouTube channel, Vanzot Productions. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.